Yeah. Yeah. Shame that I'm still partially sick. Yeah. The big thing that I want to actually bring up is that there are some very specific mana dump abilities that are really powerful, like Soul of Theros, Soul of Zendikar, Ulven Will Tracker, um, but a lot of the mana dump abilities on creatures specifically are only really important when they become combat tricks. And I like a lot of the combat tricks that we have with creature mana dump abilities. But you end up needing other better creatures in order to actually take advantage of them most of the time. Like Soul of Zeros, for example, really wants you to go really wide with your deck building. There are a couple of things that I did not get to show off that I would have liked to have showed off because they're actually pretty cool. Uh, do, do, do. And where did he go? There. Then it's about Bacchus. Yeah.
Bless you.
Uh, hey, Dragon Whisperer. Mm-hmm.
Yay. Well, given that this was a singleton build, that I do have a decent number of cards to share.
Yeah.
So, one comment that I wanted to make about your build that I found interesting is that you picked a lot of really high mana value cards.
Yeah, I did.
Which I like. Like, I get why, because you have abilities in your deck that allow you to exploit.
Specifically, Bag of Tricks. I really wanted to show off how powerful Bag of Tricks can be. And I did get to show off, it resolving one particular relatively powerful critter. My Populate Celestia boss. But Populate requires you to have other really good tokens to generate. And it's usually really good with the centaurs as opposed to the beasts that I was bringing out. And the best thing to do with Populate is actually angels. And I wasn't bringing out angels or dragons, so yeah.
I see. So my deck concept is pretty simple. The red guys get lots of power. The blue guys make these big power creatures unblockable until end of turn.
Right.
One problem that I noticed relatively quickly was, well, now you're splitting how you spend your mana each turn, because it takes a decent amount of mana just to make a creature powerful. It also takes a decent amount of mana, fucking Coral Helm Guide, to make these creatures unblockable as well.
Yep.
So I found, actually, I had the greatest success using creatures that had level up, because leveled up creatures retain their levels
and they
even
retain
after
the amount
the
of
end
mana
step.
that you have spent on them.
Precisely. There were a couple cards that unfortunately would have been really cool if I got to play them, because they suited the nuance of this deck matchup pretty good. Most notably is the Patchwork Crawler, which actually gains activated abilities of creatures that it consumes from the graveyard, while also putting +1/+1 counters on it. That would have been cool.
Yeah. You would want to use like Goblin Banneret and Falcon Wrath Exterminator with it.
So that was one. And I suppose the other nuance, also in the interest of having abilities that consume mana, would be the Soulbright Flamekin, which gives me a shitload of mana as long as I use its ability a total of 3 times. So you net 3 just by using it. And the idea was to dump all that mana into a red creature that fire breathes. Probably, honestly, the Kargan Dragon Lord in this case.
But he's already a flyer, and he already has fire breathing. He doesn't.
But he also has trample.
You don't need to give him trample if he's got flying and fire breathing.
Very true. And that was another thing that I noticed is that you do not necessarily have to give a creature unblockability if it already has abilities that makes it difficult to block in the first place, like flying.
Yeah.
These were things that I realized after the fact. So there. Also, that I was happy that I got a chance maybe to use Ludovic's test subject, which is kind of like level up, except it's not really level up. It transforms into a 13/13 with. Does it have trample actually?
Yes, it does.
It's a 13/13 with trample. Yeah. Fortunately, I did not get to play him.
But yeah, mana dump abilities when you build your deck around using a couple of them are actually something that you really should be considering during deck building. However, when you do what we do and decide to actually have all of your permanents have mana dump abilities, it becomes clear relatively quickly that which mana ability should we, be focusing on using. It was the big issue that I ended up having because I ended up running a bunch of lands that didn't actually generate colored mana. I still think that Gavany Township, if you just splash it into something, is one of the best mana dump lands that has ever been printed, especially if you go wide. But, Core Haven was doing really well for me.
It was actually, yeah. It countered my strategy perfectly because I was normally buffing only one creature at a time, and that's exactly what Core Haven does. Is it stops a big nasty baddie from touching your life points.
Yep.
I did want to. I did raise an eyebrow certainly that you were using lots of cards that had high mana value because
that was because I was trying to resolve a Bag of Tricks, and Bag of Tricks when it resolves successfully on one of the higher payouts is a really easy way to affect the board state in your favor really nicely.
Right, when you got Bag of Tricks to work.
Mm-hmm. The problem is I figured out relatively early on that, hey, I still want to actually be able to use my Core Haven defensively or maybe even start spreading counters with Gavany Township. I don't have the 11,412 mana that I would need in order for me to do all of this.
Right, because you're tying it up by casting creature spells or using other activated abilities on the board.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you had some wonderful activated abilities at your disposal.
Ulven Will Tracker, man. Do not doubt the potency of fight on creatures. Fight is a really great fucking removal spell.
Yu-Gi-Oh, baby. I did enjoy very much the incidental interactions that we had enjoyed, which is part of the reason why Gerdat and I don't really talk about what our decks are going to do. We talk about what colors they're going to be, so we don't see a lot of the same. We didn't see any of the same between our two decks during this game, which made it wonderful. And then we have happy little episodes like these, and I finally got Gerdat to answer my request to have just one more game. Please.
All right, so we didn't really explore anything in black. Black's mana dump abilities tend to be, weakening or killing of creatures. There are some that actually use that actually go into hand control, but one of the bigger ones that it actually specs into is graveyard recursion, which is kind of why we didn't show those off, because if you're spending additional mana to get stuff back, then you usually end up not having enough mana to cast it again. Especially in black, because black doesn't have, all that good of mana acceleration.
Precisely.
The different mana dump archetypes that the colors have are actually relatively well defined, or at least they were upwards of 5 years ago. I'm not entirely sure if white's control aspect is still as well renounced as green. Well, here's the thing: green doesn't actually have all that many combat tricks on mana dump abilities, as far as I've seen.
Well, maybe creatures that have like regenerate and death touch. I think there are a couple of those out
There are
there.
definitely some that have regenerate, but I don't think I know of any green creatures specifically that can give themselves death touch with a mana dump.
Right. No, no, that it would already have death touch.
I don't know. I do enjoy mana dump as a feature, but I always end up skipping it out when I'm doing deck building because I like flash in the pan stuff instead of actually building a long state control game. I'm not good at long state control. I just am not.
Well, you definitely know how to use a well-developed board once you got it.
Yeah, but I have to actually get there, and
Oh yeah.
mana dump abilities don't tend to actually allow you to develop a board unless you're specifically developing bunches of tokens. Yeah. But yeah, this has been us exploring mana dump as a concept. It will be Cloud's turn to pick out the next thing that we do for Magic the Gathering exploration. I assume he doesn't have anything planned out quite yet. Yes.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see past the current exploration. I am pleased that we are expanding the kinds of things that we can do versus where we're isolating down to a set or a block or using a pre-built deck matchup. Now we have this interesting um, trick in our bag of tricks to consider when we want to challenge each other to a game of Magic following certain parameters.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to picking out something, maybe even entirely different, because it need not stop with just the ideas we have so far. There's a whole galaxy of ideas to explore in Magic.
There is. Hopefully, they remember to bring their own socks.
Ha! It's cold out in space.
Yes, very cold. All right, everyone, be safe.
Bye bye now.